What's up YouTube? So in this video I'm going to cover the Suzuki GSXR1000R QuickShifter and everything I've done to make it shift better and how I've eliminated some of the extra blip in driving into the corners and the delay in return of power after a quick shift. And at the end I'm going to cover the one mod that I added for something other than the quick shifter that helped my shifts tremendously while on track. So let's get into it. Okay, so first you have to understand how a traditional quick shifter works. I know a lot of you know this already, but I'm just going to cover it for those that don't and where people will understand why it's different. A traditional quick shifter has a sensor that detects the motion, and once it detects the motion as you shift the bike, it will kill the spark, the fuel, or the spark and fuel together in order to unload the transmission and allow the shift to occur. All right, so I'm going to show a RPM gear versus time map that's in the Woolwich software. And you will see that at certain RPMs and certain gears, there's a certain amount of kill time to unload the transmission where the shift must occur to the next gear. If you miss a shift in this case, most likely you do not have enough shift time or kill time in order to complete the shift. Explain how the Suzuki QuickShifter works and how it's in the ECU. All right, so on the screen, I have a picture of the ECU inputs and outputs from the manual. I'm gonna go over these inputs and just explain what they actually are. And then I'm gonna explain later how you control these inputs and what you actually need to do to get smoother blips and shifts. All right, on the left, there's the gear shift sensor. It's just the rod or the shifter on the rod itself. Acceleration position sensor is actually the TPS, or your actual throttle position. It's where you actually have your throttle. You have crank position for RPM, then the actual electronic throttle valve position, the gear position sensor, and the outputs are ignition coils for the spark cut, the throttle valve motor for the ETV position or electronic throttle valve position, and the fuel injectors for fuel cut. So you have two modes on the dash that you can program through the key, and these modes are actually the sensitivity of the shift, where mode 1 and mode 2, it's two different sensitivities on how easy it is to shift. I'll put the modes up on the screen. I want you to understand that the modes just control the sensitivity of the shift. It does not control the amount of effort you have to use with your foot to make the shift or complete the shift. It is just the sensitivity. In a previous video, I did cover the shift voltages. I'm going to go ahead and put a picture of the shift voltages on the screen. 2.5 appears to be the center voltage for the strain gauge, and as you deviate farther away with your program voltages from 2.5, the harder it is to shift, or the more motion is required to initiate the shift. I have adjusted my shift voltages to make it more customizable to what I like and how I like it to feel. All right, so I've covered how the ECU works, or the inputs to ECU. I've covered the shift voltage, and the shift sensitivity. Now I'm just going to cover the easy things to check that you'll read on all the forums, or just possible poor shifts. They're pretty standard, but here they are. First one's going to be the chain tightness. Make sure the chain's tight, or at least falls within spec. For the track, I run mine a little loose. I have not ran into any problems with it on the track with it being slightly loose. Next will be the shift rod tightness. Make sure the nuts on the shift rod are tight, that there's no free play, and that everything is good to go there. There's nothing is sloppy. Check your sprockets. Make sure your sprockets aren't worn out, that you don't see anything unusual there, and that they're tight. Finally, the most obvious is deliberate shifting. When you shift, use deliberate force and make sure you feel the shift complete before you ease off. Most of my missed shifts today occur because I did not follow through the shift. I was lazy shifting. All right, so the next part of this video, I'm going to get into the operational side of making this shifter work much better. All right, downshift when the throttle's closed and the hand is on the brake. This really smooths out the tendency for the bike to over blip and try and drive you into the corner. But what I noticed on the track is if I didn't have the brake on with the throttle closed as I downshifted, there would be a tendency for the bike to try and drive into the corner. Okay, so shifting at wide open throttle works best. It has provided the smoothest shifts for me. But if you are going to upshift, have a steady throttle. Do not be rolling the throttle as you're shifting up. The reason why you don't want to be rolling the throttle is if you think back to the ECU inputs, there was throttle position and electronic throttle valve position. So if you're rolling the throttle as you're shifting gears, understand that that shift kill time is a moving target as well, because you're actually telling the ECU that you're moving as well, that the throttle positions are moving, so the target's moving. Kids, keep in mind how the ECU works for these shift kills. All right, so finally, for the bonus tip, it's rear sets. Once I installed the rear sets, I couldn't believe how smooth the QuickShifter became, and the only thing I can figure is that the ergonomics and actual foot position, getting in a comfortable place, and the tolerances between all the components just made for a smoother shift.